Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderaker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderaker. Welcome to WowBiz Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. Innovate to be great. You've heard that phrase before. We take it very seriously. We think greatness is right around the corner for most of you that are watching WowBiz Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderaker with my commentator and my guest, Mr. Bruce Arendt.
Good to have me. I was going to say good to have you.
You know, maybe you should welcome me to this set.
Lynn, thanks for coming.
Exchanging roles, it sometimes can be very creative. Anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about innovation today because everybody I talk to is kind of saying, is everybody else kind of planning a new product rollout, or what is everybody else doing? Yeah. We're just sitting on our hands over here treading water. And I thought it might be wise to really dive into the specifics of the innovation process.
Yeah, because that's a mysterious process, you know.
It is, absolutely.
It really is.
You know, sometimes people will say, hey, how about this, you guys? And, you know, 90 days later, a new product rolls out and everything works well. But seldom does it that
usually not.
And that easy, that's right. So, have you ever been part of an innovation process, and what was the most outstanding, what was the worst or the best aspect of that process?
Oh, there's too many worsts to even remember.
Really?
Well, most things, you know, most ideas you throw at the wall and most don't stick.
Correct.
Occasionally you get one that does come up, but in corporations I've been involved in, I couldn't even name them off the top of my head, but different innovative either programs for the company or new marketing efforts or business development efforts or whatever they
Oftentimes it does start in marketing.
Yeah. Usually, in fact, in my experience, because that was kind of my wheelhouse.
Sure.
That's where it started, you know.
Absolutely, because marketers are responsible for kind of seeing the future and creating what I would call scenarios. This could unfold, or we could do this, and then this would unfold, and so on. I think that's an important responsibility that belongs to marketing.
Keep your finger on the pulse of the whatever industry you're in, and watching the competitors and all that. How are they marketing? What can we do differently? You know,
Exactly. Yeah. And let me ask you this before we continue down this path. Do you think that let's say the technology people or the engineers or the accountants that are a part of a company, do they respect the marketers that are responsible for coming up with these scenarios and ideas, or do they not?
I hate to make generalizations.
Yeah.
A lot of times,
this is a generalization.
Yeah, a lot of times they have a different viewpoint, a different perspective on things.
They do.
That isn't quite as out there, you know, and they might think you're a little bit too out there. But if they are seasoned and if they're honest, they can have a lot to contribute to the innovation process. And you really need their input if you want to do it correctly.
You really do. You know? From a financial or an operational point of view.
Otherwise, you're creating in a vacuum, essentially, and you have to have their input.
Exactly right. All right, so let's get back to the innovation process. Let's say, for instance, we've got people here in front of us. They say, look, we've heard that innovation is a big deal. We kind of understand. It seems kind of exciting, but we don't really know where to begin. What do you think would be a good beginning point or a good starting point?
Everybody goes through this, no matter what company it is. If it's a really progressive, you know, cutting edge company, or somebody who's never really done anything spectacular at all.
Right.
I think you have to start with, okay, now what? Now what do we do? Where do we begin? I think it's a matter of, in my opinion, just starting to throw ideas out, just even as a group,
kind of an open-ended brainstorming thing.
And you might want to then narrow it down to selecting a team to go ahead and carry through.
And that's a big decision, because sometimes the big shots in the company or the veterans that have been around, they assume that they're going to be on the innovation team if it's important.
Right.
But they're all very busy with important things themselves.
Right.
So they often don't have the time or the energy to devote to showing up at another innovation project meeting. And I guess I'd say this right off the bat, that I think having agreeable, eager people who are kind of passionate about the general idea, sometimes you can get further down the road with those people because they're into it, as opposed to the other guys who just are trying to get a little symbolic notch on their belt.
Yeah, no, those are the people that will get you down the road, are the people who have a vision, or they can see it, even if they're not high on the ladder corporately, they might have a lot more insight about the company than you realize.
Exactly. Now, you just said a very interesting thing, insight about the company, and you've also mentioned briefly the industry. But we haven't mentioned the end user, all right? The person who actually consumes the product or uses the product, right? Now, as you know, I've had the opportunity, well, since 1991, that's quite a while ago.
Was that all?
To do a lot of research, usually executive interviews, what I call qualitative research, where I'll visit for half an hour with somebody who is a customer of my client, or maybe a vendor, or maybe a past customer, and really visit with them and get them to be kind of real candid and open with me, because I position myself as a researcher. And I have to tell you, Bruce, that in those instances, I've probably done it maybe, I would say 50 to 60% of the time I get a client, I insist that we do this research. And the research always like just opens the door to like incredible insights and opportunities. If you don't do that, you kind of sit around and argue and bicker a little bit about, do we do this or that? And since they're the client, then we kind of just do what they say. And things don't always work out. What do you think about that?
I think the fact that you're a neutral third party, the researcher,
the disinterested one,
you're not threatening, you're not, and they're more likely to open up a little bit to you. And otherwise, companies are shooting in the dark. They don't know exactly, because a lot of times the clients aren't going to open up to them.
And let me just give you a quick example. I won't name companies' names right here. But there are many companies around the area, and we all know about these companies, that have been around a long time. They're very proud of their longevity. And they kind of assume that since we've been around a long time, that somebody should definitely prefer us and maybe pay a little extra for our product or service, right? So I went out, and this happened more than once. I went out and I visited with clients of these companies. And the first 15 minutes, by the way, were kind of perfunctory. They're predictable answers. Oh, they're really great. Yeah, we've been working with them off and on for a long time. But then I started to get into symbols. I said, well, tell me here. I said, if this company were a truck, a vehicle, would it be an F-150 or would it be a Ram Charger? And they stop, and they go, well, I don't know. I think F-150. I said, what a great answer. Why would that be? Now we start to find
you start drilling down.
We start moving into a right brain mode rather than the left brain analytical mode, and where they're trying to protect their butt, frankly, in the interview. But now all of a sudden they're sharing, like, what's a truck is a truck, and then I'll go. I'll ask another question. I'll say, I know you're a very sensitive guy, and that's part of your leadership profile. When you're with these people, or your team are out in the field with them, or they're doing work with them, how do you feel? How does it feel to work with them? Oh boy! Right? Now we start to get to the truth. They can't think about some way some rhetorical way to dismiss me. And say, well, they're kind of arrogant, and they assume they're better than everybody else, and all my guys hate them, and
you start getting the truth.
Now we're getting to the truth. The core truth. That's more important than performance, functionality, price, whatever. If we don't like you, so this is when I'm actually creating value for people. Is when I bring this back to people, and they're humbled and embarrassed. And then they say, well, what do you suggest we should do? And that's when the world begins.
Well, the key to all of that is someone who can set aside their ego a bit and say just what you said, what do we need to do to change, or how can we do it better?
So I guess the point of all of this, understanding the innovative process, is most of us just kind of gravitate to what's going on in the company and what can we talk about in the industry. A lot of people don't even think about, well, why don't we just go out and talk to the end user and find somebody who can find out what they really, how they feel about us. By the way, women will say this more likely than men, because they're more attached to their feelings. But anyway, so there's more to the innovation process, acknowledging that there is a need, and that if we don't innovate, we might be on the back end of the curve somehow, which means you might be fired eventually, all right? People go, okay, I'm with you. So then the question is, well, how do we do it? Well, we have probably a committee, or a couple, 2, 3 people that kind of spearhead things. And how do we choose those people? Who's the leader? How does the CEO or the president of the company, how do they explain what's happening? Because we got to make sure he or she is on board.
Right.
Before we go off and spin around and do what is essentially an experimentation, a very messy process.
And it's got to be quantifiable. You have to have some type of measurement of, are you getting anything done? Are you, even if you're not coming up with the biggest ideas in the world out of the chute, you've got to at least have a sense that you're
accountable.
You're accountable, and you're going to get there at some point, but you're at least making some kind of turbulence that can churn up an idea.
You know, I have to tell you something now to interject here. I totally understand, and I kind of agree, but the innovation process is a creative process.
Yeah.
It's not deductive. It's not logical.
No.
It's creative. And when you start hemming creative people in, saying, well, I need a report by the end of the week telling you how much money you're going to make us in the next 6 months, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know, that can be very inhibiting.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired here if I don't come up with it. And so nothing flows when those kinds of things are laid on the innovation members.
I see that side too.
I'm sure you can. Listen, so how do you roll it out? Let's say, for instance, it's a new product.
Okay.
All right, so we got a new product and we're capable, we think we can do this, and we think it can be quite a bit better than the competitors. So then the next question is, what do we tell the employees? Mm-hmm. And what steps do we take to, talk to the customers about it, right? And I got to tell you, talking to the employees first is a really important thing.
Oh, you have to.
Right, because they have to get behind it and be proud of it.
You gotta be on board.
And yet they didn't have anything much to do with it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So they're like, yeah, good luck on that, we'll see. And if it's really great, I'll jump on board, Right. There's a lot of that. But I was just going to say, I've had some experience in this realm. You want to have a really solid celebratory kickoff, and so all the big shots take it seriously. And then the first time anything good happens,
you celebrate.
Have a victory, toast, we're on our way.
Right.
That's when the rest of the employees come on board.
Yeah.
Until then, they're like, get back to me when, when it's clear that this is going to be a success.
Because there can be a lot of cynicism because people are used to the way things always have been, and anything new is a lot of times threatening, you don't know. So you've got to get people on board.
You got to get people on board, and the top people have to be able to talk the talk more than platitudes and rhetoric. They have a tendency to use, oh, by the way, our innovation initiative is very important, rah-rah innovation, but they tend to not get down in the weeds and talk about some of this, and just really talk about the specifics of the product or the market. So people are like, he's BSing me.
And they can see through that.
They can see through that, right? And back to the operations, back to the core business. So, Bruce, Aaron, thank you so much for chatting with me about the innovation process. It's a big deal, and I think we're going to see a lot of innovation kind of coming up. All the big magazines, Harvard Business Review, Strategy Plus Business, Fast Company, all of them are saying there's going to be a wave now. A lot of it in healthcare, as you can imagine.
Huge.
And of course the technology people and so on. So we've got a very interesting thing. We're going to, of course, this show is kind of devoted to the state of Nebraska and how innovation emerges here.
Right. So
we want to make sure everybody understands how powerful and important it is. And we'll talk about it again and again. But thanks for your help on this. Absolutely. Hey, I've got some kind of good news. We've got a new sponsor for WowBiz Nebraska, a fantastic organization here in the Omaha area, but really known in eastern Nebraska where we operate. It's called Jim Beatty Golf Ventures. Yeah. Now, Jim Beatty is quite an interesting man. I've known him off and on a little bit for years and more recently in greater depth.
Okay.
He's one of those entrepreneurs that I know you and I respect. He's running at least 2 companies separately and doing quite well with both of them. Now, there are not many people that can do that.
No, there's not.
And he's also finding a way for them to converge so he can, and one of them, of course, golf is his hobby, and he's turned it into a business. Mm-hmm. And then he's also well known across America as one of the top 20 economic developers in the United States of America. Right here, Mr. Jim Beatty.
Top 20 in the U.S.?
Top 20 in the U.S. in economic development, and which he's been in for many, many years, So he's become well known, right? but he's also very well respected in the African American golf industry.
Wow.
And respected there. So he's doing some very special things. And I want to talk to you a little bit about Jim Beatty Golf Ventures in particular. You know, we use the word platform a lot. You know, Google has a platform.
Right, right.
Facebook, platforms. And a lot of people hear this word and they don't quite know what that means, right? And what the easiest way to say is that if you're a member of the platform, you don't have to go through somebody. You can contact them directly on that website and, you know, do business or whatever.
Right.
That's an example of a value-added platform, right? Well, Jim Beatty is operating on a platform. It's not high-tech necessarily, but the golf course is a platform.
That is a platform. There's a lot of businesses done on the golf course.
A lot of business is done on the golf course, and you kind of have to be a member in some cases.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful thing because it's casual and relaxed. All right, now, of course, he's an excellent golfer.
I've never been relaxed when I play golf, though. Ever.
Well, if you play around Jim, especially, and this is the thrust of this particular message here, he likes to organize informal, casual outings, not championship tournaments and for those kind of guys.
Okay.
And there are many of them, but really just using golf as an excuse to socialize, perhaps attract new members to your club or your nonprofit group.
That's a great idea.
It's a great idea. And raise funds. You know, fundraising is a big deal.
Sure.
A lot of people get elected the president of some kind of a nonprofit group, some health group or whatever, and they're immediately say, well, what are you going to do to get more members and increase cash flow? And they're like, I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm a little uncomfortable approaching people and saying, hey, pony up.
Right.
So you do these golf outings organized by Jim Beatty Golf Ventures, and Jim knows how to organize them and get it all structured and put the groups together and get them out there. And at the same time, kind of keep it light, you know, so people can kind of laugh and the defenses come down.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, to get people comfortable. You know?
Comfortable, not judging my shot or whatever, but really kind of just being open to the whole experience. Of course, you're outdoors, right? And by the way, if social distancing continues for the foreseeable future, if it does, you know, golf is about as good as you can get.
That's about as good as you can get.
From a social distancing point of view.
And still be
interacting
with people.
Yeah, you're with people.
Right.
That was a bad shot. Anyway, I just want to welcome Jim Beatty Golf Ventures. He has the ability to be a catalyst for membership development, fundraising, pulling people together. God knows this is something we want.
Well, I think at this time especially.
Especially, but he's been doing this for a long time, and people know that he's able to pull people together and still keep it kind of loose and low-key and have fun, which I think is something not everybody has the ability to do.
No, that's a gift.
When you're organizing events, there's a tendency to get uptight coordinators and and takes all the fun away.
Right.
But Jim Beatty is a fun guy to be around, very bright consultant in both the golfing world. And I'm going to tell you more about him later on. We're going to chat again about Jim Beatty Golf Ventures, our new venture. Welcome, Jim Beatty Golf Ventures, to WowBiz Nebraska. Bam, bam, bam. Huh?
You should yell 4. 4.
I should have. Next time we do that, I'm going to yell.
Okay, good.
Or you can interrupt me. Just, Lynn, shut up. 4. Because there's a mistake coming.
Right.
Some verbal gaffe or whatever. All right, that's the end of that. We're going to move on and talk about business trends here in WowBiz Nebraska with Bruce Arent, Lynn Hinderaker. We're going to address a tough issue, and this is going to appeal particularly to senior executives and larger companies.
Okay.
All right, this will fit. And so here, I'm going to set the scene.
Okay.
All right? You and I are the two co-CEOs of a largest company in eastern Nebraska.
Okay.
All right? And it's been rough the last 6 months. Cash flow, employees are gone. They're not producing much. Productivity is low, and they're all remote learning. They're horsing around in their pajamas. Who knows what they're doing? And we're paying them a salary, so what's going on? Well, anyway, so the investors have shown up, right? Maybe a couple bankers, board of directors.
Okay.
All the big shots
big guns
are in the room.
Yep.
Closed door meeting.
Oh.
And they say, Bruce and Lynn, we like you guys, but it's been a very, very rough period recently, right? Profits are way below. And we're taking our own personal cash and throwing it into the pot just to get the bankers paid, and so on. And so this can't continue. Now, We are smart enough in business to know that this is a period of great fertility and potentiality, as well as hardship and fear. Right? We get that principle.
Right.
And so we want to ask you, Bruce and Lynn, to examine what we think are the four primary aspects of business in the organization, and tell us where you think we're at in those respects, and which of those things, if we had to sink some real money, extra money, or time and energy into one facet of this, which facet would be. And then you would say, well, what dimensions are we talking about? Go ahead and say that.
I was just going to ask you, what dimensions are we talking about?
Yes. I was prepared for that. So the four dimensions are, and this is by the way, this comes up because of experience. All right. Yeah. One is product development.
Okay.
Everybody knows that's an important dimension of business. Sure. Next one, organizational development.
Okay.
Right. Which is kind of how people are structured and who does what and how does it work. Third one would be, let's call it customer development.
Okay.
Which is marketing, advertising, and customer service.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last facet would be management development. I didn't say leadership development, I say management development, meaning everybody who's kind of at a mid to high level.
Okay.
Who manages a team of anybody.
Okay. What was the first one?
The first one is product development.
Product development.
Then organizational development.
Okay.
Then business development or customer development.
Okay.
And then finally, management or leadership development.
Okay.
Those four facets, we're going to lay that in front of you two guys, and we're going to ask you to figure out where's the problem and where's the solution if we're talking about these four facets. Isn't that interesting?
That's a tough one.
Well, I find it a stimulating exercise. Yeah. Because so often the facet that really is the issue gets ignored. It's been that way for a long time. Right. For instance, you look at the management development piece for just a minute. A lot of companies organize their books in such a way that the CFO knows what's going on, the controller, they know what's going on.
Right.
But a lot of the managers, frankly, have no control over the money flow and where those resources are going. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So they really aren't managing money. Somehow that gets... That's the money guy over in the other end of the building.
But yet they may be called on the carpet.
Because your division is not profitable, et cetera.
Right.
So they'd say, well, if I could move the money around here, and that could be more. All right. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
That's one thing. There's an interesting thing, and so then you'd go back to the second facet we said, which is organizational development. Well, maybe that's the answer. Maybe we don't have the right people managing the right functions.
Well, and I was also thinking in that regard, with COVID,
yes,
and the way people have been working remotely, and your whole organizational structure might be really affected by all of that.
Up for grabs. Some people, by the way, are really excited. They say we're getting stuff done faster than we've got it done before. We got all these people out there. They got nothing to do but work. They're working their butts off out there. And believe it or not, we don't need 6 months to come up with a new product or a new idea. These people were banging it out in 3 weeks. So we want to stay with this whole thing, close the office almost all the way down, and just work with these people to kind of accelerate the world. Seriously.
I know.
So that's an organizational development decision that the stakeholders in the audience might be going, let's hear more about that. Right. That's what I heard some other companies doing that. Right. So product development would be the first thing. I think we right off the bat we say, are we competitive with our products?
Yeah, but I have to lean toward the whole customer and business development side.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how I'm wired.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, you have to have a product, but you've got to have a place to sell it.
Yeah.
If you have people to sell it to and a way to get the word out.
And I was going to say, and maybe we don't really understand what the customer wants these days, because things have changed a lot over the last few years. So I think the first thing would be send somebody out to find out really what the customer does care about.
Kind of like what you were talking about earlier.
That would make, I don't think anybody would argue with that if they feel that they could live with the results, right? Then the next question I would say then, let's say we got the report there and the customer likes this, but they hate this, all that, right? Then what do? I'm thinking management development then, all right? Let's find out what managers will do or think they should do, and if they don't have any insights, get them out, right? Replace them with people that are a little more maybe imaginative or whatever.
But the customer development the customers have to be the roadmap for all of that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
And then go from there. Like I say, if people can't seem to deliver on that, then maybe they aren't the right person for that particular position, or
exactly,
or whatever.
Exactly right. And then I think I would also look and say, have we been left behind in certain things that are just kind of drifting along? Mm-hmm. Should we just stop, defund them? In other words, kind of just what Joseph Schumpeter used to call creative destruction, which is take anything that's underperforming and get rid of it. Huh. Yeah, he was a brilliant Austrian economist, and that was his idea, is the companies should look and act like a bunch of entrepreneurs. And if something's just floating along and they're generating a little bit of paltry amount of profit, but there's no upside with them, cut them off.
That's easier said than done, but that it is a very
yeah, and then take the resources and reallocate it in
right.
3 innovative new products that show potential.
Okay, that makes sense.
Would be the idea. And then once we get those in place, then we bring the managers into a room and say, we want to restructure the organization so that value is being created between departments and between people more frequently. That's the key issue, is where in the whole structure is value being created. Yeah. You know? And if the managers can't see it, or they don't know where that would be, because none of it's obvious, right? You got to see, kind of look through the cracks.
Right.
But if you can figure out where value is being created, and you're going to kind of stop up the dam, plug the dam, while meanwhile incentivizing and even throwing some money at entrepreneurial feeling ventures, then your culture, everybody will be happy because we have a new future. Nobody's going to get fired.
Right, they'll feel a little more secure because you've got a direction.
We're doing something.
Yeah.
And then there will be happiness and joy and bliss,
exuberation. Yeah.
That kind of thing. All right, well, I think we just solved our problem. We'll call it 4D. It's 4-dimensional thinking.
There you go.
Huh? We could maybe patent that and just like sell this little episode right here.
So I think the board isn't going to fire us after all.
I don't that yet. All right, Bruce Aaron, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
That was fun.
You do a great job with WowBiz Growth Dynamics, or WowBiz Nebraska, excuse me. And I'm Lynn Hinderaker here, and we will see you next time. Don't miss us, because we are doing cutting-edge work here. We're thinking about the next big trend. You're interested in innovation and transformation. We're all over that subject right here. Are we not?
We are.
All right. I'm Lynn Hinderaker. We'll see you next time. Don't miss us. Bye-bye. Thank you.